In Peru, President Pedro Castillo met with the relatives of the victims of two massacres for which former President Alberto Fujimori had been convicted. Fujimori was released from prison on Thursday, the Constitutional Court. Russian and Ukrainian government authorities agreed to establish 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians trapped in the middle of the conflict. Zimbabwe is already counting the cost of the faraway conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, with a ripple effect expected on not only fuel prices but also the agricultural inputs, which adversely affect farmer viability. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Peru, President Pedro Castillo met with the relatives of the victims of the two massacres for which former President Alberto Fujimori had been convicted. Fujimori was released from prison on Thursday by the Constitutional Court. At the meeting held at the government palace, President Castillo listened to the complaints of indignations made by parents, siblings, and children of those targeted by an illegal squad, which either murdered or disappeared people suspected of having taken part in armed actions under the Fujimori administration. Voices of rejections inside and outside Peru have given way to different reactions, like that of Constitutional Court President Augusto Ferrero, who said the decision can be appealed at the international courts. Gisela Ortiz, sister of one of the 10 students kidnapped, tortured, and assassinated by the squads who served as culture minister under Castillo, said the families deserve justice. And on Friday, Chile saw the first protest in the historic Plaza de la Dignidad, Dignity Square, in the nation's capital since the inauguration of President Gabriel Boric. The head of state has been repeatedly criticized on social media and news agencies for the repression once again carried out by the Carabineros, Chile's infamous police force. Strong images of the Chilean security forces' actions returned to the scene when a demonstration for the political prisoner of the 2019 social unrest took place. Two demonstrators were arrested and another was injured when he was rammed by a policeman and was left unconscious due to a contusion of the occipital bone. Several activist leaders and parliamentarians, including some of President Boric's political running mates, called for an urgent review and transformation of the police force. The former president of Brazil and pre-candidate for the presidency, Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva, visits on Saturday the LVB settlement for the Landless Rural Workers Movement in Londrina. More than 10,000 members of the Landless Rural Workers Movement gather in this settlement, the largest agrarian reform area in the metropolitan region of the country, to welcome Lula. The event takes place in the framework of a meeting that marks the national launching of the grassroots committees of the movements, created to work in the organization of workers and to promote the construction of a popular project of Brazil, along with the population from neighborhoods, study centers, churches, and cultural spaces. The program also includes a donation of 60 tons of products elaborated by the landless families. This is Lula da Silva's first visit to the state of Parana since his illegal arrest. The Mexican Senate approved on Friday a recall referendum created President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's term in office until 2024, which has already begun to be debated between the president and government officials. The president will now be able to promote the consultation for the recall of his mandate, which will be discussed again next April 10th by the president himself. The head of state showed his approval during his regular morning press conference, where he assured that the approval of the reform is part of democracy, since it will be possible from now on to qualify and decide if the head of state is governing the country correctly. In Belize, local organizations protested against the arrival of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Prince William and Kate Middleton, are arriving in Belize this weekend. This is the first stop of their Caribbean tour, celebrating the Queen Elizabeth's historic 70-year reign. The United Black Association for Development Educational Foundation, in an official statement, declared that the royal visit is an atrocity to their African ancestors and to the African community in the country, arguing that the royal family benefited with the kidnapping, trafficking, enslavement, and genocide of their ancestrals. The UEF added the Belize's political class are in complicity in re-traumatizing African descendants by permitting the visit.
The people who did wrong to our African ancestors are coming back to Belize. And the government of Belize expect us to celebrate the people who have killed, tortured, wronged, and continue to do so within the system of governance. Expect us to celebrate that? And then they want to speak on our behalf to go at the same British people and begging, eh? No. Our African ancestors are here with us today. We will not be moved. We're still here. And respect to the indigenous people in Southern Belize who are also resisting those oppressors coming back.
And Cubans are currently submitting the 24th version of the new family code to popular consultation. There are many citizens' initiatives to help understand this important legislation, which will guarantee a more just and inclusive society in the Caribbean island. Lisandra Andres, our correspondent here in Havana, gives us some more details.
New family code bill draft. 51 Cubans from inside and outside the island have joined together to give voice to the draft of the new family code.
Sección cuarta de la Constitución de la Adopción.
Artículo 268. Nulidad de la renuncia.
What you hear is the full text of the document. The initiative was born in the social networks on February 7th, a week after the popular consultations in the neighborhoods began throughout the island, thanks to journalists Juliet Calaña and Claudio Peláez. Claudio recalls that in less than 72 hours, all of the participants were reading the fragments of the 500 articles that make up the code.
Viene por toda la manipulación que estaba existiendo en el código del código de las familias por fundamentalistas religiosos.
This comes from all the manipulation of the family codes by religious fundamentalists, by people who oppose the Cuban government. And there was a whole manipulation of this family code, as if the state was going to take away parental responsibility from parents, or taking over the children. Many people began to compare it to, at some point, was the Operation Peter Pan, and so we decided that our voices could contribute to making the family code more understandable.
Decidimos que nuestras voces podían aportar una manera más de hacer entendible el código de la familia.
The different voices and recording formats resulted in 6 hours and 29 minutes of reading, also designed for the visually impaired or people with reading difficulties. In the near future, they want to prepare a reading in sign language in order to continue expanding the scope of the bill draft.
And as a result of this collective reading, we have launched the campaign The Code Does Ring. That we want is to join those groups, those initiatives that are beating of this code, and to explain a little of what the code is about. These new concepts are being introduced in the family code, such as parental responsibility, which has caused so much controversy, that of progressive autonomy, in other words, concepts that are all new for us, but which have forced us to understand much more that the code is about, and explain it to as well to the people who are addressing this sort of audiobook.
The family code is, they say, such an inclusive, fair and advanced proposal that Cubans from different political positions and the most diverse sectors of society have wanted to join in its collective reading.
Because we feel we need for everyone to be able to comprehend and understand and to build their own criteria for the voting process. I feel very honored to be part of this beautiful project, which is to give voice to the code of families. Thank you very much for including this non-professional voice and for allowing me to defend those rights, which also means defending life.
I joined this initiative with a great friend to read the draft code for families, because I believe that is the grain of sand among many.
Look, it seems that with this proposal of the new family code, we are going to be able to get married in Cuba again. Yes, that looks what it says of the rights of duties between spouses, Article 204. Equality in marriage is constituted on the basis of equality. Sex doesn't matter, what matters is what we feel. And it is so good that we have a bill that supports love between human beings.
And so, Cubans from here and there, plural as they define themselves, unite to bet on an advanced, fair and necessary code that reflects the diversity of realities that Cuban families live in today.
Lisandra Andrés, Telesur, La Habana, Cuba.
Thank you, Lisandra, for the report. Let us now take a short break. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Russian and Ukrainian government authorities agreed to establish 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians trapped in the middle of the conflict. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Irina Vereshchuk reported that the corridors will be in operation in Kiev, Donetsk, Luhansk, and the Kherson regions. According to the official, the evacuation route from Mariupol to Zaporizhzhia will remain operational. The Deputy Minister also said that humanitarian aid will be provided to the residents of the Kherson Oblast. The agreement on the opening of these corridors was signed on Thursday between the diplomatic delegations of Russia and Ukraine, after several allegations of irregularities made by Moscow concerning the implementation of the humanitarian corridors. Russian President Vladimir Putin had a phone conversation with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and stressed that his troops are doing everything possible to preserve the lives of civilians in Ukraine. After 24 days of the special military operation in Donbass, the Russian president stressed that the instruction to all commanders is to preserve and protect the lives of civilians and that military actions are focused on military objectives. It was also reported that the Russian Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Vershinin, held talks with a delegation of the United Nations on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine and Donbass, in particular on everything concerning the organization of the humanitarian corridors. We continue in Russia. Public opinion polls show that President Vladimir Putin has 80% approval among Russian citizens. According to the survey conducted by the Public Opinion Fund, the approval rating for the actions of President Vladimir Putin during the period from March 7th to the 13th has reached 77.2%, and the confidence rate on him was 79.6%. The survey took into account 1,600 Russians over 18 years old and was conducted through telephone. The Russian Ministry of Defense issued its usual report on the special military operation carried out in Ukraine. According to the report of the Defense Ministry spokesman, General Igor Konashenkov, the Kinzhal hypersonic air ballistic missiles have been used to destroy a subterranean ammunition depot. This is the first time these missiles, which are practically impossible to detect, have been used in combat. The senior official also reported the destruction of an electronic intelligence center of radio communications using coastal missiles Bastion in the Odessa region. The Defense Ministry has confirmed the deactivation of 69 Ukrainian military facilities and 196 unmanned aerial vehicles. Shortly before the military report was published, German Defense Minister Christine Lambrecht confirmed that NATO will not intervene in the conflict on Ukraine, nor will create any no-fly zones for the moment. In Spain, the National Federation of Fishermen's Guilds announced late on Friday night that the fishing fleet will remain on strike and will be anchored in port until next Wednesday, March 23rd, due to the increase in fuel prices. According to a release from the organization's president, Basilio Otero, currently the sustainability of the fishing sector lies in the hands of the Spanish Minister of Agriculture, Fishing and Food, Luis Planas. Due to the stagnation of activities, the fishing fleets and some fish markets are forced to stop their operations. For these reasons, the organization expressed the importance of establishing immediate proposals, otherwise the fishing sector could suffer strong consequences. A meeting between representatives of the Federation and the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries is also scheduled for March 23rd. China relaunched its COVID-19 early diagnostic program in response to the fast spread of the Omicron variant. The country had maintained outbreaks under control through a combination of strict border checks, extended quarantines, and selected blockades, and has not reported any coronavirus-related deaths for more than a year. However, the highly transmissible Omicron variant poses a severe challenge to that strategy, prompting authorities to close cities. On the other hand, health authorities in Shanghai say they are continuing with a flexible prevention strategy for the latest round of COVID-19 infections. with communities citywide to be placed under lockdown in batches instead of together at once. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Zimbabwe is already counting the cost of the faraway conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, with a ripple effect expected not only on fuel prices but also the agricultural inputs, which will adversely affect farmer viability. The southern African nation imports hundreds of thousands of tons of wheat and grain from the two nations annually and relies on Russia for critical agricultural inputs, all of which could be held up by the conflict. Soaring global commodity prices due to the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine will make it more difficult to assist those left vulnerable. Currently, Russia and Ukraine constitute 65% of the external wheat supplies, and the longer the conflict between the two nations goes on, the more precarious Zimbabwe's situation becomes. Zimbabwe has the option to procure wheat from North America, yet that will be at significantly higher prices.
Russia is a major supplier of fertilizer as well. So it means as we go into winter production, as also we prepare for the 2022-23 summer season, we are going to feel that effect, especially in the prices of those commodities, and also especially when we start to see shortages, it also impacts then agriculture.
The Economic Community of West African States expressed concerns about the 3-year transition period in Burkina Faso, where the army has seized power. The ministerial delegation met with Burkina Faso's new president, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Santiago Damiba, who came to power in a coup d'etat on January 24th. Following such events, ECOWAS suspended the country from its membership. Ghana's Foreign Minister Shirley Ayor-Kor-Botchwi, and leader of the delegation, declared that ECOWAS asked the transition government to provide a clear roadmap of its activities for the next 36 months, and stated that they will continue working together to bring normality to the country. The Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari announced the implementation of measures to end the shortage of fuel and power across the country. Nigerians are also dealing with diesel and gasoline shortages, which have resulted in long lines outside filling stations after the government rejected containers of fuel due to excessive methanol content. According to Ajayi Kadir, Director General of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, the cost of gasoline has more than quadrupled this month to as high as 800 nairas per liter in Africa's largest economy. At the same time, around 40% of the country's population is experiencing longer than usual power disruptions due to the country's aging national electric system. On television, Nigerian President Buhari apologized to the people and announced measures to address the issue. And Malawi launched a nationwide campaign to vaccinate children against polio. The move comes after a case of wild polio was reported on February, the first case in the country since 1992. Dr. Susan Campbell, a National Professional Child Health Officer, said that the country procured 6.8 million doses of oral polio vaccines to be administered to 2.5 million children under 5 years of age in all 29 districts of the nation. All have polio vaccine for free of charge. Once children receive their 4 doses, they will be protected from the disease, which can cause permanent paralysis.
Polio victim football.
Polls have closed in East Timor after Asia's youngest nation held its 5th presidential elections since independence on Saturday, with political stability and economic security at the forefront of voters' minds. The 16 presidential hopefuls include former resistance fighter and incumbent president Francisco Lulo Guterres, as well as independence figure Nobel laureate Jose Ramos Horta, and a former Catholic priest. Preliminary results are expected later today, but an official result will be announced sometime next week. First hammered by the pandemic, East Timor's economy took another hit last year when Cyclone Seroja struck, killing at least 40 people on its half of the island and transforming communities into wastelands of mud and uprooted trees. Like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. Remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.